Warsaw, Poland, September 1939. Two brothers. One is a university-trained architect who designed government buildings and earned 3 times the national average wage. His drafting tools are polished. His reputation is immaculate. His portfolio is thick with commissions from institutions that no longer exist. The other brother never finished secondary school. He learned to butcher meat at 14 from a neighbor who needed an extra pair of hands. He knows how to break down a carcass, salt and preserve it, and make it last through a winter. Within 8 months of the German occupation, the architect was trading his drafting tools for bread. The butcher was never hungry. Most people hear that story and think it is about luck, or timing, or the particular brutality of wartime occupation versus ordinary economic crisis. It isn't. What that story is actually about is a structural law that has repeated itself without exception across every documented economic collapse in recorded history. And once you understand it, you will never think about the value of skills the same way again. Here is the conventional belief. The more specialized and credentialed your knowledge, the more economically protected you are. The higher you climb the educational ladder, the more insulated you become from economic storms. A degree is a fortress. A credential is armor. This is what schools teach. This is what parents repeat. This is what human resources departments reward in stable times. Here is what the economic autopsies actually show. Every single collapse in recorded history has systematically destroyed credentialed knowledge workers faster than it destroyed tradespeople. Not sometimes, not usually, every time, across every continent, across every monetary regime, across 6 centuries of documented financial catastrophe. The fortress was always an illusion. The armor was always borrowed from the institution that issued it. The question is not which skills are recession-proof. The question is which skills are institution-proof. And the answer has been sitting in the forensic record for 2,000 years, waiting for someone to read it correctly. Detroit, Michigan, 2009. The United States automobile industry is in free fall. General Motors has just filed the largest industrial bankruptcy in American history. Chrysler has followed. The city that built the modern industrial economy is watching it dissolve in real time. Unemployment in the Detroit metropolitan area reaches 27.8%. Commercial real estate is collapsing. White-collar professionals, financial analysts, marketing directors, corporate lawyers employed by the auto industry's vast institutional ecosystem are being ejected from the economy in waves. On Gratiot Avenue, 3 miles from the GM headquarters, an electrical contractor named Marcus has been running a 2-person operation since 1998. He wires residential and commercial buildings. He troubleshoots industrial equipment. He does the work that cannot be outsourced to a spreadsheet or delegated to a server farm. In 2009, while the institutional economy around him is disintegrating, Marcus's phone does not stop ringing. This is not a coincidence. This is the first and most fundamental law of collapse economics, what the forensic record consistently identifies as the continuity principle. When institutional systems fail, the physical infrastructure of daily life does not stop requiring maintenance. Pipes still burst, wiring still fails, roofs still leak, engines still break. And the person who can address those failures without requiring a functioning institutional system to back them up becomes something more than a worker. They become critical infrastructure. The Bureau of Labor Statistics data from the 2008 to 2009 financial crisis confirms the pattern with precision. While professional and business services shed 1.9 million jobs between December 2007 and June 2009, construction and extraction trades lost proportionally far less and recovered measurably faster. The skilled trades that maintained physical systems, electricians, plumbers, HVAC technicians, industrial mechanics, demonstrated employment resilience that credential-dependent knowledge workers simply could not match. The forensic signature is identical in Weimar Germany. Between 1921 and 1923, as the mark fell from 75 per US dollar to 4.2 trillion per dollar, the institutional employment class, clerks, accountants, middle managers, bureaucrats, became economically worthless faster than the currency itself. Their credentials, issued by institutions that were themselves disintegrating, evaporated alongside the monetary system that had given those credentials meaning. But the tradespeople who maintained the physical infrastructure of German daily life did not operate in the dying monetary system at all. A Berlin plumber in 1923 wasn't paid in marks. He was paid in coal, in bread, in sausage, in firewood. His skill bypassed the collapsing monetary system entirely and plugged directly into the real economy of survival goods. The credential could not do that. It had no mechanism to do that. Cuba's special period in 1993 replicated the same forensic signature under entirely different political conditions. When the Soviet Union's collapse cut Cuba off from 80% of its oil imports and 85% of its trade overnight, the formal economy froze. GDP contracted 34% in 3 years. The institutional employment class found their credentials suddenly worthless in an economy that could no longer support the institutions that had given those credentials value. But mechanics, electricians, and repair workers operating in Cuba's informal economy found themselves in extraordinary demand, precisely because the government could not import new equipment. The old Soviet machinery had to keep running. The person who could make it run was not a convenience. They were the difference between function and collapse. NBER working papers on skilled labor resilience across multiple economic disruptions show this is not a historical artifact. It is a structural feature of how economic systems fail. Repair and maintenance skills are what economists call counter-cyclical. Most skills lose value during economic contraction. They are correlated with prosperity. Repair skills invert. The worse things get, the more broken things accumulate, and the more desperately people need someone who can fix them. You are not riding the economic cycle. You are on the opposite side of it. The pipe is either fixed or it isn't. That simplicity is the protection. Caracas, Venezuela, 2018. The bolivar has lost 99.9% of its value. The official exchange rate bears no relationship to economic reality. The government is printing banknotes with so many zeros that ordinary transactions require wheelbarrows of currency, a detail so precisely echoed from Weimar Germany that economic historians have noted it with something approaching disbelief. The official banking system is functionally inoperative for large portions of the population. On Avenida Libertador, informal currency traders are conducting a different kind of business. They move between the official bolivar rate, the black market dollar rate, and by 2018, the emerging USDT stablecoin transactions that are quietly becoming the real medium of exchange for anyone with access to a smartphone. These traders are not educated economists. Several never completed secondary school. What they possess is something that no university was offering and no credential could confer: the ability to read price differentials between two parallel monetary systems simultaneously and facilitate exchange across the gap. This is what the historical forensics identify as monetary translation: the capacity to operate fluidly across two simultaneous monetary realities when an official currency system is dying and an informal replacement is emerging. And the forensic record on it is, without exaggeration, one of the most consistent patterns in all of economic history. Every documented currency collapse creates the same dual monetary structure: the official system, state-enforced, legally mandated, visibly dying, and the real system, Informal, adaptive, parallel, and increasingly the only system through which actual commerce is possible. The gap between them is where economic survival is negotiated, and the person who can read that gap, who understands the real exchange rate between whatever is collapsing and whatever is replacing it, holds a form of economic power that the collapse itself cannot destroy. Ray Dalio, in his study of the changing world order, examining every major reserve currency collapse over the past 5 centuries, identifies what he calls the transition fragmentation period. In every case he examined, the Dutch guilder, the British pound sterling, the pre-war German mark, there was an intermediate period in which multiple currencies competed simultaneously within the same economy. The people who could read and operate across that fragmentation not only survived, they available. The person who could set a bone, suture a wound, recognize a nutritional deficiency, and manage a complicated birth without hospital access was one of the most universally valued members of every collapse community studied. Tim Harford, in Adapt, makes an observation about economic resilience that applies here with surgical precision. He argues that the systems most likely to survive shocks are not the most sophisticated, but the most modular, the ones that can decouple from each other and continue functioning independently when the larger system fails. The credential is the opposite of modular. It is entirely and irreversibly dependent on the institutional system that issued it. A skill that addresses a fundamental human need without requiring that system is not a derivative of institutional value. It is the underlying asset itself. Here is what the complete forensic record, read across 2,000 years of economic collapse, is actually telling you. Every collapse you have ever studied follows the same sequence. The institutions fail first. The credentials evaporate second because they were derivatives of the institutions all along. And in the wreckage, the people who retain economic dignity are the ones whose skills addressed fundamental human needs without ever requiring the failed system to function. The repair trade is not a backup plan. For most of human history, it was the primary plan. Monetary translation is not speculation. It is the economic infrastructure of every transition between dying and emerging monetary regimes, documented in every currency collapse without exception. Food production knowledge is not survivalism. It is the most consistently demonstrated form of food security in the entire historical record. Medical knowledge that functions without hospitals is not alternative medicine. It is medicine as practiced by the vast majority of humanity across the vast majority of human history. You came into this video thinking about which skills are recession-proof. The 2001 recession, the 2008 crisis, the 2020 shock, small disruptions, institutional wobbles. The real question, the one the historical record has been asking for centuries, is which skills are institution-proof. The Russian dacha farmer who fed her family through hyperinflation, the Argentine mechanic whose income increased during a sovereign default, the Lebanese currency broker who kept commerce breathing when the banking system stopped, the Cuban physician who practiced medicine in a parking lot with a penknife and improvised anesthetic, the Weimar carpenter paid in coal when the currency became kindling. They were not lucky. They were not exceptional. They were holding skills that had never required the institutions to function in the first place. History has been teaching this in every language, on every continent, through every monetary regime for 2,000 years. It just never made it into the curriculum. If this opened something for you, subscribe. Economy Archive performs economic autopsies so you understand the forensics before you become part of the record.